What kind of advice do you have to homeowners?
Practicing that preparedness. Starting the conversation now is always going to be a benefit to any association out there.
And welcome to Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, president of GlobalPro, where we manage your risk to recovery. And we have represented 1,000 community associations and business owners and more than $1 billion in recovery. We are your source for insurance news you can use. We want to make sure that you have the latest information to protect your interest in the event that you're placing insurance or recovering from a loss. And part of that, in the topic for today, is to talk about your fiduciary obligations as community association board members, property owners, as well as some of your vendors out there that may get involved in the process and making sure you understand where their obligations end and yours begin as board members as well as property managers. It's a great topic that I had an amazing opportunity to talk with a top property management company owner-operator here located in South Florida. And we got to get into a lot of different issues and nuances as it relates to, or misconceptions rather, about what you should be doing as property managers or board members when dealing with loss and recovery. So often, people make the mistakes of confusing their obligations in an emergency situation with a construction project. The reality of it is that, and you've heard us say it here, the rule of thumb is you mitigate, stop, recover, rebuild. Why you do that is because you as a property owner or property board member, as well as a property manager, want to make sure that you adhere to your obligations on your insurance policy. Your policy requires you to mitigate, stop, allow your insurance company to investigate your damages. Determine the scope of your damage first. Prove your damages. Then you can start to rebuild once you've recovered the money you're entitled to. But the reality is that soon after you mitigate, you've gone through the adjusting process, you've determined the amount of the money that you're entitled to, you are no longer in an emergency. There's no life safety issue, or there shouldn't be, because as part of your mitigation efforts, you should have been protecting not only life, but also property, making sure that there is no damage, that there is no life safety risk, rather, and that you can address the property damage. That's what I meant to say. You want to make sure that you can protect the property from further damage. You want to protect life from any sort of risk involved. That's really, really important. You want to protect your fiduciary obligations by not speeding up the process and starting to rebuild before you recover. Under Florida Statute 718.11, now I'm not an attorney, this is not legal advice, and I encourage you all to go out, consult with your own association attorney. But the reality is under 718.711, it talks about fiduciary obligations of board members. And your property manager, like your broker, believe it or not, like your accountant or even your contractor, are not licensed to adjust claims. And too often we see board members encourage property managers, or property managers allow board members to engage their brokers in a process by which they're attempting to adjust the claim themselves. Or they assign all their rights and responsibilities over to a contractor and say, hey, you deal with it, thinking that that's going to be the easiest way to get their property back to the way it was prior to the loss. But the reality is your contractor is most interested in getting paid. That's what drives them to do the work in the first place. Their intention is not based on your policy conditions or your obligations in it. In fact, if you read a lot of their contracts and you look at their estimates, it'll say that if you don't recover, you're still obligated to pay them. But you've already assigned all your rights over to them, so if they don't like what your insurance company pays them, not you, but them directly, guess what? You're now going to get involved in a lawsuit. Or potentially they're going to take over an alternative dispute resolution method that we talked about before, which is appraisal. But you have no control anymore. You have no control of the money. You have no control of your benefits. You don't know how it's being spent or what it's being spent on. You have really no idea what they're actually doing to restore your property and whether or not they're value engineering, because you haven't gone through the typical bid process that you should for any sort of construction project on your property. There's many construction professionals out there that do a lot of owner representation. Ask them about it. After you're covered the money you're entitled to, you have to go through a voting process sometimes, depending on the extent of the damage. Some bylaws require quorum to make material changes to the building. And if you think putting carpet for carpet is not a material change, think twice. Also, if there's damage to common area elements, to repair fireproofed walls, you have to pull a permit. You have to go through a building process to be able to do that. You can't skip the process to just getting it back to the way it was without knowing how much you're going to get paid. Protect your fiduciary obligations. You are a fiduciary. They're enlisting you. Your unit owners have enlisted you to protect their financial interest, right? So make sure that you don't, unfortunately, walk into any sort of exposure. And I will be honest with you that we've seen a number of boards recently recalled because of the mishandling of claims or the failure to actually make a claim and adjust it properly, where we are now being brought in by the new board after the old board got recalled to actually open a claim that should have been opened before, or to take over a claim that would have been mismanaged by, let's say, the contractor or the broker. We have to go back and double our efforts to collect information, potentially even engage third-party contractors to help us deal with particular causation issues. You don't need to go too far with regards to the causation, but if there's an issue, maybe you have to address it if it's not so obvious and evident. But you need to know who you need or what you need without spending too much or spending yourself into a hole. We had an association recently hire an engineer, unbeknownst to us, to go out and just do a preliminary evaluation, issue a report, unbeknownst to us. We're reading the report, and it speaks to a lot of issues that have nothing to do with insurance. And unfortunately, it implicates the insurance process and the claims that we're making in both positive and negative ways for no reason. They started reporting on things that they did not do a proper investigation to, and they're using words that they could have otherwise used different words for to describe and to explain the same thing, but in the context of the insurance contract of the policy means something different. So you need to understand how to navigate the process. You need to understand the terminology that's used within the adjusting industry to make sure that you as a fiduciary are protecting the financial interest of your fellow unit owners and yourselves. These are your neighbors. Make sure, as a volunteer, that you're not engaging any sort of practices that in any sort of way prejudice your financial obligations or potentially could be looked upon as potential fraud or other allegations. There's also this business judgment rule, which we're hearing more and more about here for local associations in the Florida market. And in Florida, there's this business judgment rule, and it's very important that you understand that, and that's under Chapter 617. And we'll make sure that you guys have the relevant information as it relates to these Florida statute. And it's important that as a nonprofit corporation that you understand what the business judgment rule means and what it means for you as a board member as well as a property manager, because you both share in that fiduciary responsibility. So to wrap it up, and there's 3 pillars you must remember as a board member as well as a property manager, is that you have a duty of loyalty, a duty of care, and a duty to act within the scope of your authority. Those are your 3 pillars. Those are your fiduciary obligations. And it's really important that you understand the implications of that for insurance claims and how simply hiring a contractor to deal with your insurance claim is tantamount to the unlicensed practice of public insurance adjusting. Or like you would hire your accountant to handle your taxes. You're not going to hire your lawyer to do your taxes. Your broker is licensed to sell you a product, not adjust a claim. A duly licensed public adjuster or an attorney that is acting as a public adjuster can adjust your claim. Now, there's a difference between an attorney that's acting as a public adjuster and an attorney acting as an attorney. You don't want to just run off and hire an attorney to be an attorney, because then you're going to put your insurance company back on its heels. They're going to claim everything as work product because they're anticipating litigation. No, you want to engage someone to represent you in the adjustment of a claim, and that's not the adjuster that goes out there for the insurance company. Those individuals represent the insurance of the insurance company, and most of those people that come out on behalf of the insurance company to your property actually have no binding authority and can't actually make coverage determinations and can't issue any sort of monies to you. Understand that there's other people that go beyond this. And you as a fiduciary, a board member, a property manager, need to understand the role players and understand the process. Remember, rule of thumb, mitigate, stop, recover, then rebuild. Recover the money you're entitled to. Understand the scope of the services and the work that needs to be performed and the cost of it before you start to rebuild. Don't spend money you don't have. It's very, very important. And that's it for this recovery report. I'm so glad all of you have tuned in this week. And we're going to continue this conversation. We're going to talk more about this because I really honestly think this is an issue that a lot of people don't understand. So go ahead, like us, follow us on all the social media platforms, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, check out our website, go to the resource section. There's plenty of information there. If it's not there, you need some more information, you have a question, contact us 24/7. We are here to represent your interest and make sure that you're protecting your interests and your fellow unit owners, as well as your boards if you're a manager. Thank you all again for tuning in this week, and let's continue the conversation. And before I sign off, we're going to continue celebrating 10 years of GlobalPro. So we've kicked it off. Be looking for all the new updates about everything that's going on. We're going to tell stories about the past. We're going to talk about things coming up. But again, thanks for tuning in this week on the Recovery Report Live. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. See you there.